So hey guys, this is your favorite fictional vortex. So in this video, we will see what if Naruto was the son of Lord Death, the true heir of Death City. Naruto x Blair x Medusa Gorgon, Soul Eater. But before we start, remember to subscribe and like this video. Now let's start. Chapter 1. Death's Legacy Awakens. The kunai sliced through the air with deadly precision. Its trajectory aimed directly at Hinata's unprotected back. Time seemed to slow as Naruto's body moved before his mind could process the decision. One moment he stood 20 feet away. The next he had inserted himself between the weapon and its intended target, the cold steel piercing his chest with a sickening thud. Naruto! Hinata's scream tore through the forest clearing, her lavender eyes widening in horror as crimson bloomed across his orange jacket. Pain exploded through his torso, but Naruto managed a defiant grin at the masked assailant crouched in the trees. "You'll have to do better than that, if you want to hurt my friends," he wheezed, blood seeping between his teeth. The rogue ninja materialized from the shadows, a look of genuine surprise crossing his scarred features. "You should be dead already. That blade was coated with enough neurotoxin to kill 3 men. I've always been hard to kill," Naruto replied, though his vision had begun to blur at the edges. Darkness creeping in like spilled ink on parchment. Hinata caught him as his knees buckled, her hands trembling but firm. She'd grown stronger over the years, no longer the timid girl who could barely meet his gaze. Now her eyes flashed with determination as she settled him against a tree trunk. "Hold on, Naruto-kun," she whispered, fingers already glowing with medical chakra. "I won't let you die." The masked attacker laughed, the sound hollow and mocking. "How touching. The Hyuga princess trying to save her hopeless crush." "You talk too much," came another voice, cool and controlled. Sakura emerged from the foliage, her gloved fist connecting with the ground and sending fissures racing toward their enemy. "And you made a serious mistake attacking my teammates." The earth fractured beneath the rogue ninja, forcing him to leap back as size-ink beasts burst from scroll to reality, pursuing him through the canopy. The sounds of battle faded as Naruto's consciousness wavered, the poison working through his system despite the Nine Tails' best efforts to neutralize it. "Stay with me," Hinata urged, her voice seeming to come from underwater. "Please, Naruto-kun, I can't. I won't lose you." "Sake, Hinata," he slurred, trying to focus on her face. "Just need a minute." But as his eyes drifted closed, Naruto felt something strange stirring within him. Not the familiar burn of Kurama's chakra, but something colder, ancient, and undeniably powerful. It resonated from his core outward, like skeletal fingers reaching through his chakra network, intertwining with the Nine Tails' energy to create something entirely new. Inside his mindscape, Naruto found himself standing not in the familiar sewer system, but in a vast, empty expanse Air fragments of reality seemed to float like broken mirrors. The ground beneath his feet was neither solid nor liquid, shifting with each step like quicksand composed of shadows. "What is this place?" he wondered aloud, his voice echoing strangely. "Kurama, he cannot reach you here, child of 2 worlds." The voice wasn't Kurama's familiar growl but something lighter yet infinitely more Irving, a sound like dried leaves scraping against tombstones. Naruto turned to find a figure hovering nearby, draped in what appeared to be tattered fragments of darkness itself. "Who are you?" Naruto demanded, instinctively reaching for a kunai that wasn't there. "I am a messenger, nothing more, ****, the figure replied, its face hidden beneath a hood of shadows. "I come bearing news that has been suppressed for 17 years. The time has come for you to learn your true heritage." "My heritage?" Naruto scoffed. "I already know who my parents were. Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki." The figure tilted its head, the movement unsettlingly fluid, half-truths, carefully crafted. "Your mother was indeed Kushina Uzumaki, but your father is Lord Death himself." Laughter burst from Naruto's lips, sharp and disbelieving. "Right, and I'm the sage of 6 paths. If you're going to mess with my head while I'm dying, at least make it believable." "Your disbelief changes nothing," the messenger continued, unperturbed. "The poison in your veins has triggered what was sealed within you at birth, your death powers. Even now, they fight alongside the Nine Tails to keep you alive." As if in response to these words, Naruto felt the cold energy intensify, spreading through his limbs like frost crawling across a window. Where it touched, the burning pain of the poison receded, replaced by a curious numbness. "That's ridiculous," Naruto insisted, though uncertainty had begun to creep into his voice. "My father was the fourth Hokage. Everyone tells me how much I look like him. A glamour, cast to protect you. Lord Death has many enemies who would stop at nothing to destroy his heir." The figure glided closer. "Look within yourself, Naruto Uzumaki. You have always sensed you were different, even beyond the burden of the 9 tails. The villagers feared you not just because of the fox, but because on some primal level, they recognized death in your soul." Naruto wanted to argue, but flashes of memory assaulted him, the way some villagers had recoiled from him even before learning of the 9 tails, how animals sometimes grew unnaturally still in his presence. The strange dreams of skull-faced figures that had haunted his childhood. "If what you're saying is true," he said slowly, "why tell me now? Why not when I was younger and desperate to know who I was?" "Because Death City needs its heir, the messenger replied, its voice dropping to a whisper. "Lord Death has been weakened by an attack. The symmetry between worlds is fracturing. Only one with blood of both realms can restore the balance." "Death City," Naruto repeated. "I've never heard of such a place. Few in the shinobi world have. It exists at the crossroads of dimensions. A place where soul resonance, not chakra, forms the basis of power." The figure extended a hand, shadows dripping from elongated fingers. "Come, let me show you." Hesitantly, Naruto reached out. The moment their hands connected, his mindscape dissolved in a flurry of images, a strange city built around a massive structure shaped like a cartoonish skull, people wielding weapons that transformed into human forms, battles against monstrous creatures with glowing red souls, and at the center of it all, a tall figure in a jagged black cloak with a childish skull mask. As that, Naruto couldn't finish the question. "Your father, Lord Death, Shinigami-sama, he has many names across many worlds." The images shifted to show a younger Kushina Uzumaki, her vibrant red hair unmistakable. Standing beside the cloaked figure, her hand resting on what appeared to be his arm, her expression one of complex emotion. Not quite love, but something deeper, an understanding that transcended ordinary connection. "My mother, and him. Their union was never romantic as humans understand it, **, the messenger explained. Kushina Uzumaki was chosen as a vessel to bring Death's heir into the shinobi world. Her unique chakra made her the only human capable of carrying a child with death essence. What neither expected was that she would come to care for you so deeply. Nor that Lord Death would find himself changed by the experience of fatherhood." Another image formed. Lord Death cradling an infant with whisker marks on his cheeks, his large white hands incongruously gentle against the baby's soft skin. When the 9 tails attacked, it was no coincidence. Forces that opposed the union of death and chakra sought to destroy you before you could realize your potential. Your mother's sealing abilities and your father's power created the unique containment that made you the 9 tails Jinchuriki while simultaneously suppressing your death powers until you were ready. The visions faded, leaving Naruto reeling with questions. If all this is true, what happens now? I'm still dying from poison in the real world. No longer, the messenger said, gesturing to Naruto's chest where the cold energy had formed a pulsing nucleus of power. Your awakened abilities have neutralized the toxin. When you return to consciousness, you will find yourself changed. The glamour that made you resemble Minato Namikaze will begin to fade. Your true abilities will emerge, though they will require training to master. And what exactly are these true abilities? Naruto asked, skepticism still evident in his tone. Soul perception. Death's scythe manifestation. The power to judge souls and send them to their proper rest. Abilities that complement rather than replace your shinobi training. The figure began to fade at the edges. Your friends are calling you back. Remember what I have shown you. When you are ready, seek the path to Death City. Your father awaits his heir. Wait, Naruto called as the messenger dissolved into wisps of shadow. I still have questions. Find Death City, the voice echoed as the mindscape collapsed around him. Find your true self. Naruto-kun, please wake up. Hinata's desperate plea pierced the darkness, drawing him back to consciousness. Naruto's eyes fluttered open too. Find her tear-streaked face hovering above his, her hands still glowing with medical chakra pressed against his chest. I'm okay, he croaked, his throat painfully dry. The poison, it's gone. Hinata's eyes widened in disbelief. That's impossible. I've barely managed to slow it down. Sakura-san said we need to get you back to Konoha immediately for an antidote. But Naruto could feel it, or rather, couldn't feel it. The burning pain had vanished completely, replaced by a strange coolness radiating from his core. He sat up slowly, expecting dizziness that never came. Trust me, he said, placing his hand over hers. Something happened while I was unconscious. I'm healed. Sakura crashed through the underbrush at that moment, her face flushed from exertion. We need to move now. I've stabilized the prisoner, but she stopped short, mouth dropping open at the sight of Naruto sitting upright. How are you conscious? That toxin should have put you in a coma by now. I told you, I'm hard to kill. Naruto replied with a grin that faltered when both women gasped audibly. What's wrong? Sakura approached cautiously, medical training overcoming her shock as she peered into his eyes. Naruto, your eyes, what about them? He asked, a tendril of unease curling in his stomach. Hinata activated her Byakugan, then immediately deactivated it with a startled cry. Your chakra, and something else. They're both visible even without my Byakugan. Sakura rummaged in her pack and produced a small mirror, holding it up with a steady hand that belied her obvious concern. See for yourself. Naruto took the mirror and nearly dropped it in shock. His normally bright blue eyes had changed. The right remained azure but now contained a pinprick of gold at its center, W. While the left had inverted to gold with a blue pinpoint. More disturbingly, the whisker marks on his cheeks had deepened and sharpened, looking less like birthmarks and more like deliberate cuts in his skin. What the hell? He whispered, touching his face to confirm the reflection was real. Did the nine tails do something? Sakura demanded, her gaze flickering between his eyes and the seal on his stomach. Is it trying to break free? No, it's not Kurama, Naruto said absently, still transfixed by his altered appearance. It's something else, something that was apparently sealed inside me along with the fox. What do you mean? Hinata asked, her voice trembling slightly. Naruto lowered the mirror, his mind racing as he tried to process everything the messenger had shown him. Should he tell them? Would they even believe him when he barely believed it himself? I need to get back to Konoha, he said finally. There are some scrolls one need to check in the restricted section of the archives. Scrolls? Sakura repeated incredulously. Naruto, you hate research. And since when do you have access to restricted archives? Since I'm apparently the son of 2 Hokages, he replied, attempting a light-hearted tone that fell flat against the weight of his revelation. Sai appeared silently at the edge of the clearing, his expression as unreadable as ever. The prisoner is secured. If Naruto is stable enough to travel, we should return to the village immediately. I'm more than stable, Naruto assured him, rising to his feet with surprising ease. The cold energy continued to flow through his system, lending his movements a fluid grace he'd never possessed before. In fact, I feel stronger than I have in years. Sai's dark eyes narrowed slightly. Your chakra signature has changed. It's darker somehow. Just a side effect of fighting off the poison, Naruto lied, avoiding Hinata's searching gaze. He knew she, of all people, would sense the falsehood. Her Byakugan missed nothing, especially when it came to him. As they prepared to depart, Naruto found himself periodically distracted by flashes of something around his teammates. Translucent, different, lee-colored orbs seemed to hover near their chests. Sakura's a determined green tinged with worry, Sai's a controlled blue with currents of uncertainty, and Hinata's a gentle lavender pulsing with what he somehow knew was affection directed at him. Are you seeing souls? He murmured to himself, remembering the messenger's words about soul perception. Did you say something? Hinata asked, falling into step beside him as they took to the trees. Just thinking out loud, he replied, forcing a smile that didn't reach his newly mismatched eyes. Hey, Hinata, do you think people can have secrets about themselves that even they don't know? She studied him for a long moment before answering. I think we all contain mysteries, Naruto-kun. some we discover only when we're ready to face them. Her voice dropped to a whisper only he could hear. Whatever you discovered while you were unconscious, whatever changed you, I'm here if you want to talk about it. The simple offer of support, without demands for explanation, touched something in Naruto, and he felt a surge of gratitude toward the Hyuga heiress. Thanks, Hinata. I might take you up on that sooner than you think. A turn to Konoha passed in relative silence, each team member lost in their own thoughts. Naruto found himself increasingly distracted by his new perception, not just the souls of his companions, but those of animals they passed, and even, disturbingly, the fading remnants of souls from those long dead, lingering like smoke around certain ancient trees or battle-scarred clearings. As they approached the village gates, Naruto felt a strange resistance, as if some invisible barrier pushed against the cold energy flowing through him. The sensation intensified when they passed the Chunin guards. O's eyes widened at his altered appearance, but who said nothing, likely attributing the changes to some Nine Tails related phenomenon. I'll take the prisoner to Ibiki, Sai announced once they were inside the village. Sakura, you should report to the Hokage. And I'll take Naruto to the hospital, Sakura added firmly, her tone brooking no argument. Those eyes and the poison need to be examined. No, Naruto said, surprising himself with the authority in his voice. No hospitals. I need to check something in the archives first. Naruto, Sakura began warningly. Please, Sakura-chan, this is important. I promise I'll explain everything once I confirm some things. Something in his expression must have convinced her, because after a moment of internal struggle, she nodded reluctantly. Fine, but I'm coming with you. As am I, Hinata added quietly but firmly. Naruto wanted to refuse, to insist on doing this alone, but the truth was he welcomed their company. Whatever he discovered in the archives might shake the foundations of everything he believed about himself. Having friends by his side could only help. All right, he agreed. Let's go. The restricted section of Konoha's archives lay beneath the Hokage Tower, accessible only to Jonin and those with special permission. Naruto had gained entry rights after the war, partly due to his status as a hero and partly because Kakashi, as the sixth Hokage, had decided Naruto needed to learn more about village history if he ever hoped to take the position himself. The Chunin guard at the archive entrance did a double take at Naruto's eyes but allowed them through after verifying their credentials. The air inside was cool and dry, heavy with the scent of aged paper and preservation jutsu. What exactly are we looking for? Sakura asked as they descended the spiral staircase into the depths of the archive. Records from around the time of my birth, Naruto replied, his enhanced vision easily piercing the dim lighting. Specifically, anything about my mother that isn't in the official history. Your mother, Hinata echoed, surprise evident in her voice. You think this has something to do with Kushina Uzumaki? I know it does, Naruto said grimly. The question is whether Konoha knows it too, or if the truth was hidden even from them. They reached the bottom level, where the oldest and most sensitive documents were stored. Naruto moved with unexpected confidence through the labyrinthine shelves, as if drawn by some invisible thread. How do you know where to go? Sakura asked, struggling to keep up. You've only been down here a few times. Naruto didn't answer, his attention fixed on a section of wall that appeared no different from any other. Yet to his new perception, a faint golden glow outlined what looked like a concealed door. There's something hidden here, he murmured, running his fingers along the seemingly solid surface. Where his skin made contact, the cold energy within him responded, flowing out through his fingertips to trace the same golden pattern he could see. With a soft click, a section of the wall swung inward, revealing a small chamber lined with scroll racks. The dust lay undisturbed, suggesting no one had entered in years. How did you do that? Sakura demanded, her scientific mind clearly struggling to process what she'd witnessed. That wasn't chakra. No, Naruto agreed, stepping into the hidden room. It wasn't. The chamber contained only a dozen scrolls, each sealed with a symbol Naruto had never seen before, a stylized skull that meant to stare back at him with empty eye sockets. Without hesitation, he selected the largest scroll and broke the seal with a touch, the wax crumbling to dust beneath his fingers. Naruto, wait, Sakura protested. Those could be trapped. Quote, But the scroll unfurled harmlessly, revealing text written in two distinct hands, one he recognized as his mother's from the few samples he'd seen, and another. More angular script that seemed to shimmer slightly on the parchment. Agreement of confluence between the realms of death and chakra, Naruto read aloud, his voice echoing strangely in the small space. In recognition of the growing imbalance between worlds and the prophecy of the child of convergence, this covenant establishes the terms under which Death's heir shall enter the shinobi world. Hinata moved closer, her Byakugan activated as she studied the scroll. This document, the chakra signature embedded in it, is unlike anything I've ever seen. Half of it isn't chakra at all, but something older. Soul wavelength, Naruto supplied, the term coming to him instinctively. The power used in Death City. Death City, Sakura repeated, her skepticism evident. Naruto, what exactly happened to you during that mission? Naruto continued reading, his heart pounding as the document confirmed everything the messenger had told him. The vessel chosen to bear Death's heir is Kushina Uzumaki, whose unique chakra and Uzumaki vitality make her singularly capable of sustaining the convergence of death essence and human life. The child born of this union shall possess the powers of both realms, to be sealed until maturity to protect both the child and the balance between worlds. His voice faltered as he reached the next passage. In the event of catastrophic intervention, as foretold by the Oracle of Iban, a secondary seal may be implemented using the nine-tailed fox as both container and masking agent for the death essence. This measure is to be enacted only in direst need, as it will significantly traumatize the vessel and potentially create unforeseen interactions between Biju chakra and death powers. They plan to use the nine tails as a seal from the beginning, Sakura whispered, the implications dawning on her. The attack wasn't random. Someone knew about this arrangement and tried to prevent it, Naruto confirmed, skimming ahead through the document. But they didn't count on my mother's sealing abilities or my father's. He stopped abruptly. Your father's what? Hinata prompted gently. That's just it, Naruto said, looking up from the scroll with bewilderment clear in his mismatched eyes. According to this, Minato Namikaze wasn't my father at all. He was a trusted friend who agreed to implement the contingency plan if necessary and to maintain the illusion that I was his son to protect me from my real father's enemies. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the soft sound of Hinata's indrawn breath. If the fourth Hokage wasn't your father, Sakura finally asked, then who was? Naruto rolled the scroll further, revealing an elaborate signature at the bottom, a stylized skull identical to the seal that had secured the document. Beside it was his mother's name written in her flowing script. Lord Death, he answered, the words feeling strange on his tongue. The Shinigami, the death god himself. Sakura laughed, the sound brittle and forced. That's impossible. The Shinigami is just a construct of the Reaper Death Seal Jutsu. It's not a real being that can father children. Actually, Hinata interjected quietly, Hyuga records speak of the Shinigami as an entity that existed long before ninjutsu was developed. The Reaper Death Seal doesn't create the death god, it summons him. And apparently, Naruto added with a humorless smile, my mother did a lot more than summon him. He continued unrolling the scroll, revealing detailed notes about the expected manifestation of his abilities and the location of Death City, a place existing perpendicular to the shinobi realms, accessible only through points of dimensional weakness or by those carrying Death's essence. There's more, he said, pointing to a passage near the end. If the contingency seal using the nine tails was implemented, my death powers would remain dormant until either I reached full maturity at 21, or what? Sakura prompted when he trailed off. Or until I experienced a near-death event that would trigger a premature awakening, Naruto finished, his hand unconscious. Lee rising to touch the now-healed wound in his chest. Like being stabbed with a poisoned kunai. Hinata's eyes widened. The attack wasn't random either. Someone wanted to trigger your awakening now, before you reached full maturity. Which means someone outside Konoha knows about this, Sakura concluded, her analytical mind quickly connecting the dots. But why reveal your heritage now? What's changed? Naruto selected another scroll from the rack, this one newer than the first. Breaking its seal revealed a message dated just 2 months earlier, written in the same angular script that shimmered with otherworldly energy. To the child of convergence, he read. If you are reading this, your powers have awakened ahead of schedule. Death City faces unprecedented danger. Lord Death H. has been gravely wounded in an attack by forces seeking to unravel the fabric between worlds. Without intervention, the barriers separating the realms of death and chakra will collapse, unleashing chaos across all dimensions. Only one with the blood of both worlds can restore the balance. You must come to Death City and claim your birthright before the next new moon. That's less than 2 weeks away, Hinata noted. Her concern evident. Convenient timing for you to be attacked now, Sakura added suspiciously. I don't like this, Naruto. It feels like you're being manipulated. Maybe I am, he acknowledged, rolling the scrolls carefully and placing them in his pouch. But if there's even a chance this is real, that Lord Death is wounded and worlds are at risk, I have to investigate. You can't seriously be considering going to this, Death City, Sakura protested. We don't even know if it exists, let alone how to get there. Actually, Naruto said, pulling out the final scroll from the rack, we do. This contains the location of the nearest gateway and the ritual to activate it. Apparently, there's a cave system in the Land of Hot Water that serves as a weak point between dimensions. The Land of Hot Water is at least 4 days' travel, Hinata pointed out. If we're to reach it and perform this ritual before the new moon. Naruto repeated, meeting her steady gaze. Hinata, I can't ask you to come with me on what might be a wild goose chase. Or worse, a trap. You didn't ask, she replied simply. I'm offering. Besides, she added with a small smile, my Byakugan allows me to see chakra and this, soul wavelength you mentioned. I might be useful. Naruto felt a surge of gratitude toward the Hyuga heiress. Thank you. Well, I'm coming too, Sakura declared, folding her arms across her chest. Someone needs to keep you from doing anything stupidly reckless, and as your medic, I'm not letting you walk into an unknown dimension without backup. What about Kakashi-sensei? Naruto asked. I should at least inform the Hokage before disappearing. Sakura's expression turned thoughtful. If these documents are authentic, he might already know some of this. The question is how much, and whether he'll try to stop you. Only one way to find out, Naruto said, gesturing toward the exit. Let's go talk to him. As they left the hidden chamber, Naruto noticed the door sealed itself behind them, the golden energy reabsorbing into the wall until no trace remained of the opening. The three made their way back through the archives and up to the Hokage's office. Each lost in thought about the implications of what they'd discovered. The Chunin assistant outside Kakashi's office did a double take at Naruto's eyes but quickly ushered them in after a cursory knock. The sixth Hokage sat behind his desk, visible eye scanning a report with apparent boredom that vanished the moment he registered Naruto's altered appearance. I see it's happened, Kakashi said without preamble, setting aside the document and leaning back in his chair. Earlier than expected, but not entirely surprising given your knack for defying predictions. Naruto's eyes narrowed. You knew. It wasn't a question, but Kakashi nodded anyway. Not everything, but enough. Minato-sensei left instructions to be passed to each succeeding Hokage. I had hope. You'd reach full maturity before the awakening. Why keep this from me? Naruto demanded, a hint of the cold energy flaring around him. All these years believing I was the fourth son, carrying his legacy. You do carry his legacy, Kakashi corrected gently. Minato-sensei loved you as his own. The fact that he didn't contribute genetically doesn't change that. He gave his life for you willingly, knowing exactly who and what you were. The simple statement deflated some of Naruto's anger. He sank into one of the chairs facing the desk, suddenly exhausted by the day's revelations. So what happens now? Sakura asked, her tone professional despite the extraordinary circumstances. Naruto found scrolls mentioning a gateway to something called Death City and a deadline during the new moon. Ah, so the summons has arrived, Kakashi mused, tapping his masked chin thoughtfully. I was told that might happen if your awakening was triggered prematurely. You're not surprised by any of this, Hinata observed quietly. How long have you known about Death City? Since becoming Hokage, Kakashi replied. Though I've never visited myself. It's one of Konoha's most closely guarded secrets, that there exists a parallel dimension where souls rather than chakra form the basis of power. We've maintained limited diplomatic contact through special envoys for generations. And no one thought to mention this to me. Naruto asked incredulously. Even after the war, after everything I did for the village. The timing was never right, Kakashi said, though he had the grace to look somewhat abashed. And truthfully, we hoped you might never need to know. That you could live a normal life, or as normal as any Jinchuriki could expect. Well, that option's gone now, Naruto said, gesturing to his mismatched eyes. I need to understand what I am, Kakashi-sensei. And if Lord Death really is injured and worlds are at risk, I can't ignore that. Kakashi studied him for a long moment before nodding. I understand. I won't try to stop you from going to Death City. In fact, I'll authorize this as an official diplomatic mission, which should give you freedom to move without interference from the other villages. Thank you, Naruto said, genuinely surprised by the easy acquiescence. Don't thank me yet, Kakashi warned. I'm sending an Anbu escort with you to the gateway. Not because I don't trust you. He added quickly when Naruto opened his mouth to protest, but because if someone intentionally triggered your awakening, they might try to intercept you before you reach Death City. Fair enough, Naruto conceded. Sakura and Hinata have already volunteered to come with me. Are you sure about that? Kakashi asked, his gaze shifting between the two kunoichi. We have no way of knowing if non-death-touched individuals can even pass through the gateway safely. The scrolls mentioned escorts, Naruto countered, and specifically noted that those with strong G connections to the death-touched could be guided through the dimensional barrier. Besides, Hinata added softly, we're not letting Naruto face this alone. Kakashi's eye crinkled in what they recognized as a smile beneath his mask. Very well, prepare to depart tomorrow morning. I'll arrange for the Anbu escort and any supplies you might need. As they turned to leave, Kakashi called out, Naruto, a moment alone please. The others stepped outside, leaving Naruto standing awkwardly before his teacher. Kakashi rose from behind the desk and approached, his visible eye solemn. There's something else you should know, he said, voice low. Something not in the official records. About your mother and Lord Death. Naruto tensed. What about them? Their arrangement wasn't merely diplomatic or strategic. According to Minato-sensei, there was genuine affection between them. Not romance as we understand it. Lord Death isn't human, after all, but a mutual respect that grew into something more. Kakashi placed a hand on Naruto's shoulder. You weren't just a means to an end, a tool created to balance worlds. You were wanted, Naruto. By both your parents. The simple statement hit Naruto with unexpected force. A lump forming in his throat. All his life, he'd wondered if his parents had truly wanted him or if his birth had been merely an unfortunate necessity for sealing the nine tails. Thank you for telling me, he managed, his voice rough with emotion. One more thing, Kakashi added, reaching into his desk drawer. This was left for you. I was instructed to give it to you only if your death powers awakened. He handed Naruto a small object wrapped in silk. Unwrapping it revealed a pendant, a miniature skull carved from what appeared to be ivory, suspended on a chain of interlinked bones so delicate they seemed impossible to craft. It was your mother's, Kakashi explained. A gift from Lord Death that she wore hidden beneath her clothes. Minato-sensei recovered it after the Nine Tails attack. Naruto stared at the pendant, feeling the cold energy within him resonate with the small object. Without conscious thought, he slipped the chain over his head. The moment the skull touched his chest, a surge of power flowed through him, and for an instant, he thought he heard a voice, childish yet ancient, exclaim with delight, "Oh my, you've grown so big. Can't wait to see you, kiddo." Did you hear that? Naruto asked, startled. Kakashi shook his head. Hear what? Nothing, Naruto murmured, tucking the pendant beneath his jacket. Just getting used to these new senses. Be careful in Death City, Kakashi advised as Naruto turned to leave. According to the records, it's a place of wonders and terrors beyond anything in the shinobi world. Trust your instincts. They're the legacy of both your parents, not just your shinobi training. I will, Naruto promised. And Kakashi-sensei, thank you for everything. Outside, Sakura and Hinata waited, their expressions a mix of concern and determination. As Naruto approached, he realized he could see their souls more clearly now, the pendant somehow enhancing his new perception. Everything okay? Sakura asked. Yeah, Naruto replied, a genuine smile spreading across his face despite the uncertainty ahead. For the first time in a long time, I think it might be. Dawn found three shinobi and their Anbu escorts, 4 masked operatives Naruto recognized as veterans from the war, gathered at Konoha's main gate. They had packed light, carrying only essential supplies and weapons. Naruto had spent much of the night studying the scrolls, memorizing the ritual needed to activate the gateway and what little information existed about Death City itself. Ready? He asked his companions as the first rays of sunlight crested the horizon. Sakura adjusted her gloves with a determined nod. As ready as I'll ever be to visit a parallel dimension ruled by a death god who apparently is your father. When you put it that way, it sounds crazy. Naruto laughed, the sound more relaxed than he felt. Most important things in life are at least a little crazy, Hinata said with a small smile. Her lavender eyes meeting his mismatched ones without hesitation. That's what makes them worth doing. With a final glance at the village that had been his home, the place he had found. So hard to protect and be acknowledged by, Naruto turned toward the road. Whatever lay ahead in Death City, whatever revelations awaited about his true nature and heritage, he faced it not as the fan Jinchuriki desperate for acceptance, but as a shinobi who had earned his place in the world through his own actions. And if he happened to be the son of a death god as well, that was just one more unexpected turn in a life already filled with them. Let's go, he said, stepping forward with newfound purpose. Death City awaits. As they moved through the forest, Naruto found his enhanced senses picking up details he'd never noticed before. The faint traces of souls left behind by travelers on the path, the complex patterns of energy flowing through the natural world, and strangest of all, occasional ripples in reality itself, like heat shimmer but vertical, that he somehow knew were weak points between dimensions. The journey to the land of hot water would take 4 days at a normal pace. But with Anbu escorts and the urgency of their mission, they hoped to make it in 3. As they traveled, Naruto felt the cold energy within him growing stronger, more integrated with his familiar chakra. The two powers no longer fighting but flowing together in patterns that seemed increasingly natural. By nightfall, when they made camp in a small clearing, Naruto found himself instinctively able to assess the souls of wildlife nearby, determining which animals might pose threats and which were harmless. The skill proved useful when he sensed a predatory presence lurking in the underbrush and warned the others moments before a massive tiger would have pounced on their sentry. How did you know it was there? One of the Anbu asked after they'd driven the beast away. It was downwind and perfectly concealed. I saw its soul, Naruto explained, the words still strange on his tongue. It was hungry, focused on hunting. The intent made it visible to me. The Anbu shifted uncomfortably. These new abilities, they're not like any Kekkei Genkai I've encountered. That's because they're not from our world, Naruto replied, staring into the campfire where the flames cast shifting shadows that seemed almost alive to his altered perception. They follow different rules. Later, as the others slept, Naruto sat awake, the pendant warm against his skin despite the cool night air. In the silence, he found his thoughts turning to the father he had never known, not Minato Namikaze, whose legacy he had carried proudly, but the mysterious Lord Death who had apparently orchestrated his very existence. Who are you really? He whispered to the stars. And what do you want from me? To his surprise, the pendant pulsed once with energy, and a whisper of that same childish voice floated through his mind. To meet you, silly. 17 years is a long time to wait. Naruto jerked upright, startling Hinata who had taken the watch position nearby. Naruto-kun, she asked softly, moving to his side. What's wrong? Nothing, he assured her, though his heart raced. Just adjusting to everything. She settled beside him, her presence calming in its familiarity. After a moment of companionable silence, she spoke again. You know, when I look at you with my Byakugan now, I can see both energies intertwining. The chakra I've always recognized as yours, bright, determined, warm, and this new current that's cooler, more precise, but just as powerful. She smiled gently. They're becoming one system, not fighting each other. I think that's a good sign. You're not afraid of what I'm becoming? Naruto asked, genuinely curious. Everyone else seems at least a little unsettled. Why would I be afraid? Hinata countered, her voice soft but steady. You're still Naruto-kun. Learning about your heritage doesn't change who you are at heart. It just adds another dimension to the person I've always. She stopped, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. The person you've always what? Naruto prompted, finding himself unexpectedly eager to hear her complete the thought. Admired, she finished, though something in her soul's wavelength, visible to him now even without actively trying to see it, suggested she'd substituted a safer word. Before he could press further, one of the Anbu appeared silently beside them. Movement in the forest. Mult. IPLE signatures approaching from the north. Instantly alert, Naruto extended his new senses, searching for the souls of whoever approached. What he found sent a chill down his spine, 5 figures moving with deadly purpose. Their souls displaying an unnatural mixture of chakra and something else, something that resonated with his death energy but felt twisted, corrupted. They're hybrids, he said, rising to his feet. Someone's been experimenting with combining soul wavelength and chakra. Like you? The Anbu asked. No, Naruto replied grimly, the cold energy gathering around his right hand instinctively. This is artificial, forced, and unstable. Sakura joined them, instantly alert despite having been asleep moments before. How many? 5, Naruto confirmed, tracking the approaching souls. But they don't feel fully human anymore. As if summoned by his words, the attackers burst from the tree line, humanoid figures with grotesquely distorted bodies, their skin covered in pulsing black markings that resembled both curse seals and something else, something that made Naruto's new senses recoil. What are they? Sakura gasped, dropping into a defensive stance. Kishin eggs, Naruto answered automatically, the term coming to him from somewhere deep in his awakening memories. Human souls that have been corrupted by consuming others, twisted further by someone trying to blend them with chakra. The creatures attacked with inhuman speed, moving more like spiders than people as they scrambled across the clearing. The Anbu intercepted 2 with precise jutsu, will. Sakura's chakra-enhanced fist sent another flying back into the forest with a sickening crunch of breaking bones. Hinata engaged the 4th, her gentle fist strikes targeting not just chakra points, but something else she seemed able to perceive with her Byakugan. Their soul wavelength has nodes similar to Tenketsu. She called out. Hitting both simultaneously seems to disrupt them. The 5th creature lunged directly for Naruto, its distorted mouth opening to reveal rows of needle-like teeth. Acting on instinct, Naruto raised his hand, the cold energy coalescing into visible black lightning that crackled between his fingers. Soul Purge, he intoned, the words emerging unbidden as he thrust his palm against the creature's chest. The effect was immediate and devastating. The black lightning enveloped the attacker, seeming to separate something essential from its form. The creature convulsed, then collapsed into dust, leaving behind a glowing red orb that hovered momentarily before Naruto instinctively absorbed it. Knowledge flooded his mind. Fragments of the creature's memories, its transformation from human to monster, and most disturbingly, glimpses of a laboratory where there's like it were being created by a figure whose face remained shrouded in shadow. Naruto. Sakura's voice cut through his momentary disorientation. We could use some help here. Shaking off the unsettling experience, Naruto joined the battle, moving with newfound grace as he channeled the cold energy through his body. Each time he touched one of the creatures, the soul purge technique activated automatically, reducing them to dust and leaving behind the corrupted souls that he absorbed without conscious choice. When the last attacker fell, an uneasy silence descended on the clearing. The Anbu regrouped, one nursing a wounded arm where the creature's claws had torn through armor and flesh alike. What did you do to them? Sakura asked, watching as Naruto absorbed the final red orb, his expression momentarily distant as he processed the fragmentary memories. I separated their souls from their bodies, he explained, the knowledge settling into place like pieces of a puzzle he hadn't known he was solving. These weren't normal humans anymore. Someone transformed them using a combination of forbidden jutsu and soul manipulation techniques from Death City. Who would have access to both? Hinata wondered, deactivating her Byakugan with a slight wince. The corruption in their soul wavelength was painful to look at directly. I don't know, Naruto admitted. But from the memories I absorbed, There's a laboratory somewhere near the border of the land of hot water. That can't be coincidence. You think someone is trying to stop us from reaching the gateway, one of the Anbu concluded. Or they want to ensure I do reach it, but in a weakened or controlled state, Naruto countered. Either way, we need to move. It's not safe to remain here. Despite the late hour, they broke camp and continued their journey, pushing through the night with only brief rest periods. Naruto found himself less fatigued than he would have expected, the cold energy supplementing his natural stamina in ways that made sleep seem almost optional. By dawn of the third day, they had crossed into the land of hot water, where steam rose from countless natural springs and the air hung heavy with mineral-scented mist. According to the scroll, the gateway was located in a cave system beneath an ancient shrine dedicated to the space between breaths, an obscure cult that had apparently served as a front for maintaining the dimensional weak point. We're being watched, one of the Anbu warned as they approached the foothills where the shrine was supposedly located. Multiple observers, keeping their distance. Naruto extended his senses, finding not the corrupted souls of more hybrid creatures, but human watchers with a strange resonance to their chakra, as if they had been exposed to soul wavelength without fully integrating it. Their guardians, he realized aloud. Descendants of the cult mentioned in the scroll. They're watching to see if we approach the shrine correctly. And what's the correct approach? Sakura asked skeptically. In answer, Naruto removed the skull pendant from beneath his jacket, letting it hang visibly against his chest. The moment he did so, the pendant began to glow with a soft golden light that cut through the mist. We walk openly, he said with certainty. They're expecting the child of convergence. As they continued forward, the mist seemed to part before them, revealing a path that wound up the hillside toward a dilapidated structure barely visible through the trees. The shrine, when they finally reached it, proved to be little more than a few crumbling stone pillars surrounding a circular courtyard overgrown with moss and flowering vines. In the center stood an altar of black stone, its surface carved with the same skull symbol that adorned Naruto's pendant. As they approached, figures emerged silently from the surrounding forest, men and women dressed in simple gray robes, their faces partially concealed by cowls. The child returns, one of them intoned, stepping forward from the group. As was foretold, you've been expecting me, Naruto said, not a question but a statement. The figure nodded, pushing back her cowl to reveal an elderly woman with eyes that glowed faintly gold in the misty light. For 17 years, we have maintained the gateway, waiting for Death's heir to claim his birthright. You know who I am, Naruto said, touching the pendant at his chest. What I am? We are the keepers of the veil, the woman replied. Our order has served as intermediaries between the realms since before the founding of the hidden villages. We recognize the essence of death within you, growing stronger now that it has awakened. She approached, studying his mismatched eyes with evident satisfaction. The convergence progresses well. You carry both worlds within you in near-perfect balance. I need to access the gateway, Naruto stated. Lord Death has been injured. The balance between worlds is threatened. The woman's expression grew solemn. We felt the disturbance 3 months ago. The veil between realms has grown thin, allowing corruption to seep through. Those ions you destroyed were but symptoms of a greater disease spreading between worlds. You know about the hybrid creatures? Sakura asked, stepping forward. We have fought them when they approached the shrine, the woman confirmed. They seek the gateway, driven by some will not their own. But they cannot pass through without a guide who carries death's essence. Someone is trying to create artificial death energy, Naruto realized, using human souls and chakra to force open a path between worlds. A path that would tear reality asunder if successful, the keeper warned. Only natural convergence, like that within you, can safely bridge the realms. She gestured toward the altar. The gateway lies beneath. We will prepare the ritual of opening, but be warned, only those with strong connections to you may pass through safely. Others would be lost between dimensions. Naruto turned to the Anbu. Your mission ends here. Return to Konoha and inform Kakashi-sensei of what we've learned about these hybrid creatures. They may target other dimensional weak points. The Anbu captain nodded. Understood. Good luck, Uzumaki. As the Anbu departed, Naruto faced Sakura and Hinata. This is your last chance to turn back. I don't know what awaits on the other side, and I can't guarantee your safety. Don't be ridiculous, Sakura scoffed. After everything we've been through, think a little interdimensional travel is going to scare us off. I'm coming with you, Naruto-kun, Hinata said simply, her quiet determination as unyielding as ever. Warmth bloomed in Naruto's chest, temporarily overshadowing the cold energy that had become his constant companion. Whatever challenges lay ahead in Death City, he wouldn't face them alone. The keepers led them down a spiral staircase hidden beneath the altar, descending deep into the earth where the air grew increasingly charged with strange energy. The cave system opened into a vast chamber whose walls glittered with crystals that seemed to absorb and refract light in impossible ways. At the center stood a circular platform of obsidian, inscribed with concentric rings of symbols that glowed faintly blue in the dim light. The keeper gestured for Naruto to stand at the center. Place your hands on the altar and channel your death energy, she instructed. The gateway will recognize Lord Death's essence and open. Your companions must maintain physical contact with you throughout the transition. Naruto stepped onto the platform, Sakura and Hinata close behind. As they positioned themselves on either side of him, each placing a hand on his shoulders, he felt a surge of gratitude for their unwavering support. Ready? He asked, receiving determined nods in response. Taking a deep breath, Naruto placed his palm on the cold obsidian and closed his eyes, focusing on the death energy flowing through him. He visualized it extending outward, connecting with the ancient power embedded in the platform beneath his feet. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The symbols flared to brilliant life, casting harsh shadows across the cavern as energy crackled around them in arcs of blue-black lightning. The pendant at Naruto's chest burned hot against his skin, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. The way is opening, the childish voice whispered in his mind, louder now and tinged with excitement. Come home, my son. The air before them shimmered and tore, revealing not darkness but a swirling vortex of indigo and gold. Through it, Naruto glimpsed impossible architecture, buildings that defied gravity, streets that wound in patterns no human mind would design, and dominating the skyline, an enormous structure shaped like a cartoonish skull, exactly as he had seen in his vision. Death City, he breathed, the name feeling right on his tongue. Remember, the keeper called as the vortex expanded to envelop them. What seems familiar may be most dangerous, and what seems alien may prove most helpful. Trust not in chakra alone, for soul resonance governs the laws of Death City. The swirling energies closed around them, cutting off the keeper's final words as reality itself seemed to fold and stretch. Naruto felt Sakura and Hinata's grips tighten on his shoulders, anchoring him as the world dissolved into streams of light and darkness. For a moment that might have been an instant or an eternity, they existed everywhere and nowhere, their consciousnesses stretched across dimensions like threads in a vast cosmic loom. Then, with a sensation like plunging into cold water, they rematerialized on solid ground. Naruto opened his eyes to find himself standing in a cobblestone plaza beneath a sky of impossible color, a deep indigo painted with stars despite the apparent daylight. The air felt different, charged with energy that resonated with the cold power flowing through his veins. Hinata gasped beside him, her Byakugan activating automatically in response to the alien environment. Everything is alive with soul wavelength, she whispered in awe. It's beautiful. Sakura looked less entranced, her scientific mind visibly struggling to process the impossible. Architecture surrounding them, buildings that curved and twisted in ways that should have caused them to collapse, streets that seemed to fold back on themselves like Mobius strips. Where exactly are we? She asked, her voice steady despite the wonder and apprehension in her eyes. Death City, Naruto replied, feeling a strange sense of homecoming as he took in the bizarre landscape. The realm of Lord Death, my father. High above them, atop a seemingly endless staircase that wound its way up an impossible mountain, the enormous skull-shaped structure loomed against the star-filled sky, the DWMA, Death Weapon Meister Academy. Heart of Death City and seat of Lord Death himself. Their journey had only just begun. Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, The City of Death and Souls. The cobblestone place. Aza hummed with strange energy beneath Naruto's feet, vibrations that resonated with the cold power flowing through his veins. A city of impossible geometry stretched before them, buildings tilted at angles that defied physics. Streets that curved upward before looping back on themselves, and lampposts that glowed with flames of blue, purple, and green. Above it all hung that unnatural sky, indigo, and star-filled despite the apparent daylight. "Is everyone okay?" Naruto asked, turning to check on his companions. Sakura appeared slightly disoriented, her medical training evident as she checked her own pulse. "Physically fine, but my equilibrium is off. It's like gravity works differently here." "It does," Hinata confirmed, her Byakugan activated as she scanned their surroundings. "The flow of energy follows different patterns than in our world. It's not circulating through pathways like chakra, it's pulsing, radiating outward from central points in everything." Naruto nodded, understanding instinctively what she described. Soul wavelengths. That's the primary energy source here, not chakra. He could see it too now. The entire city pulsed with life in a way completely different from Konoha. Every building, every cobblestone, even the air itself seemed to resonate with conscious intent, as if the city were a living entity rather than a collection of structures. "We should head toward that," Sakura suggested, pointing to the massive skull-shaped structure dominating the skyline. "I'm guessing that's where we'll find Lord Death." "The DWMA," Naruto confirmed, the knowledge surfacing naturally. "Death Weapon Meister Academy." But, he frowned, squinting at the seemingly endless staircase winding up the mountainside. "That's a lot of stairs." "You're hesitating?" Hinata asked gently, surprise evident in her voice. "The Naruto I know would have raced to the top already." Her words sparked something familiar in him, that competitive spirit that had always defined him. "You're right, let's go." They had barely taken 3 steps when a feminine voice called out behind them. Well, what have we here?" New arrivals don't typically just appear in Death Plaza without passing through customs first. They turned to find a woman sauntering toward them with a confidence that bordered on feline. She wore a revealing outfit consisting of a black top hat, a skimpy black dress that left little to the imagination, thigh-high boots, and carried herself with sensual grace. Most striking were her golden eyes, slitted like a cat's, which fixed on Naruto with unmistakable interest. "You must be special cases," she purred, circling them appraising Ly. "I'm Blair, by the way. Not a witch, just a cat with a ridiculous amount of magical power." "A cat," Sakura repeated skeptically, eyeing the very human-appearing woman. In response, Blair winked and disappeared in a puff of purple smoke, replaced by a small black cat with the same golden eyes and a miniature witch hat. "See, just a kitty," she meowed, before transforming back with another smoke cloud. "But this form is much better for shopping and flirting." Naruto found himself speechless, partly from the casual display of transformation that required no hand signs or chakra gathering, and partly because something about Blair's soul wavelength felt oddly familiar, as if it resonated with his own death energy. "I'm Naruto," he finally managed, "and these are my friends, Sakura and Hinata. We've come to see Lord Death." Blair's playful demeanor shifted subtly, her eyes narrowing as she studied Naruto more intently. Those eyes, one blue, one gold, and that energy signature. She leaned closer, her nose nearly touching his as she inhaled deeply. "You smell like death and sunshine mixed together." Without warning, she pressed herself against him in a hug that left Naruto blushing furiously. "Oh my whiskers, you're him, aren't you? The child of convergence, Lord Death's heir. You know about me?" Naruto asked, gently extricating himself from her embrace while noting Hinata's faintly disapproving expression. "Everyone with any magical sensitivity has felt the ripples in the fabric of reality for the past 17 years, Blair explained, bouncing excitedly on her heels. "Lord Death having a son with a human woman. It's only the biggest interdimensional scandal since the founding of Death City." Sakura cleared her throat pointedly. "As fascinating as the gossip might be, we really do need to reach the DWMA. Lord Death is supposedly injured, and we're on a deadline." Blair's expression sobered. "It's true. He's been confined to the death room since the attack 3 months ago. Can barely manifest outside it anymore." She clapped her hands decisively. "Right, I'll take you there the quick way. No need for all those stairs." "Quick way?" Hinata inquired. Blair's smile turned mischievous. Pumpkin, pumpkin," she chanted, drawing a complex symbol in the air that glowed purple. "Flying pumpkin." A massive pumpkin materialized beneath them, its surface carved into a grinning face. Before they could react, it rose into the air, carrying them upward at dizzying speed. Hold tight. Blair laughed as they clung desperately to the smooth orange surface. Death City Express has no seatbelts. The city blurred beneath them as they soared over crooked rooftops and twisted streets. Naruto, finding his balance quickly, moved to the front of the pumpkin beside Blair. You said everyone with magical sensitivity knows about me, he said, raising his voice over the rushing wind. Does that include Lord Death's enemies? Blair's smile dimmed slightly. Smart cookie, aren't you? Yes, that's exactly why your existence was kept secret for so long. The old treaties between realms state that a convergence child must remain in their birth realm until maturity unless emergency protocols are activated. Like Lord Death being injured, Sakura deduced, hanging on with white-knuckled determination. Precisely, Blair confirmed, though injured is putting it mildly. Someone tried to shatter his soul wavelength, the metaphysical equivalent of a nuclear attack in your world. Naruto felt a strange twist of emotion at this news, concern for a father he'd never met, anger at whoever had attacked him, and a disorienting sense of responsibility. Do they know who did it? That's the million-soul question, Blair replied grimly. Whoever it was knew exactly how to mask their wavelength. Even Stein couldn't track them. Stein, Hinata asked. Death's best meister, mad scientist, has a screw through his head, literally. Blair pointed ahead where the DWMA loomed closer. We're nearly there. Brace for landing. The pumpkin descended toward a massive balcony extending from the skull structure, slowing just enough that when it dissipated in a puff of orange smoke, they dropped only a few feet to the stone surface. Sakura landed in a perfect crouch. Hinata descended with graceful precision, and Naruto, despite his newfound abilities, managed to stumble and nearly fall on his face before catching himself. Some things never change, he muttered, straightening his jacket as Blair giggled. The balcony opened onto a grand hallway lined with candles that burned with blue flames. Portraits of stern-looking individuals in formal attire adorned the walls, each bearing a small plaque identifying them as Death's Scythe, followed by a date, range and region. Previous Death weapons, Blair explained, noticing Naruto's interest. Lord Death's personal arsenal over the centuries. The current Death Scythe is Spirit Albarn, though he's more useful for annoying people than actual combat these days. She led them deeper into the academy, Saint classrooms where students paused their activities to stare at the newcomers. Naruto could feel their curiosity like physical pressure against his skin, their soul wavelengths reaching out unconsciously to assess the strangers. Why are they looking at us like that? Sakura whispered. They can sense you're not from this realm, Blair explained. Especially you, Pinky. Your soul wavelength has that distinctive chakra flavor to it, kind of spicy and structured. Very unusual here. Hinata, meanwhile, seemed fascinated by everything they passed. The architecture inside doesn't match the exterior dimensions, she observed. It's bigger inside, and the spatial relationships keep shifting. Death City doesn't really do conventional geometry, Blair agreed cheerfully. Drives newcomers CRAZY until they learn to stop relying on their eyes and start feeling the soul of the place. Finally, they reached an ornate door marked with Lord Death's skull emblem. Blair paused, suddenly serious. The Death Room beyond is a pocket dimension Lord Death created as his personal sanctuary. It's where his soul is most concentrated now that he can't manifest freely throughout the city. She turned to Naruto. He's been waiting for you for 17 years. Try not to look disappointed when you meet him. Disappointed? Naruto echoed, confused. Blair's expression turned uncharacteristically gentle. Lord Death isn't exactly what most people expect when they hear, terrifying god of death. Just keep an open mind. With that cryptic advice, she pushed open the door, revealing a long corridor lined with red torii gates that seemed to stretch into infinity. As they walked through, Naruto felt the air grow thicker with concentrated death energy, so potent it made his skin tingle. It feels like walking through honey, Sakura commented, moving as if against resistance. Soul pressure, Blair explained. Lord Death's wavelength is immensely powerful, even in his weakened state. It affects physical reality around him. The corridor eventually opened onto a surreal landscape, a vast blue sky with cartoonish clouds drifting across it, despite being indoors, and a circular platform covered in crosses that Naruto somehow knew were symbolic gravestones. In the center stood a large mirror framed in ornate gold, and before it, as that, Naruto whispered, staring at the figure that turned to face them. The being resembled an exaggerated cartoon character more than a fearsome death god, a jagged black cloak topped with a childish skull mask, oversized white gloves for hands, and a body that seemed to defy physical form, occasionally revealing nothing but empty space beneath the cloak. "Well, hello, hello, hello," the figure exclaimed in a high-pitched, jovial voice that contained unexpected depth and resonance. "Visitors from the shinobi realm. How exciting." Lord Death bounded toward them with comical energy, his movements fluid despite his apparently rigid mask. He stopped directly in front of Naruto, leaning down to peer closely at him. My, he said, voice softening with what sounded like genuine emotion. "You've grown so much, Naruto-kun. Last time I saw you, you were just a teeny tiny baby." "Yes indeed." Naruto stood frozen, all his prepared questions evaporating in the face of this unexpected reality. This cartoonish figure was his biological father, the fearsome death god whose name was whispered with terror in the shinobi world. "You're Lord Death," he finally managed. "That's me." The skull bobbed in affirmation. "Though your mother called me Shinigami-kun. She thought my formal title was too stuffy." He leaned closer, voice dropping conspiratorially. "She was right, of course. Kushina-chan was always right." The casual mention of his mother's name jarred Naruto from his stupor. "You really are my father." "Of course I am," Death exclaimed, throwing his oversized hands skyward. "Couldn't you tell by the family resemblance?" Despite everything, Naruto found himself laughing at the absurdity. "Yeah, I definitely got your height and good looks." Lord Death's mask somehow conveyed delight despite being rigid. "And your mother's sense of humor. Wonderful." He spun to face Sakura and Hinata, who had been watching the exchange with wide-eyed astonishment. "And you brought friends. How thoughtful." "I'm Lord Death, but you can call me Shinigami-sama." "Everyone does." Hinata bowed formally. "It's an honor to meet you, Shinigami-sama." "I'm Hinata Hyuga." "Sakura Haruno," Sakura added with a slight incline of her head, her scientific mind clearly still processing the contradiction between Death's fearsome reputation and his cartoonish reality. "Welcome, welcome." Death clapped his hands together. "Blair-chan, thank you for escorting them. Would you mind fetching Stein and Spirit? I believe they should be part of this reunion." "On it, boss." Blair winked, transforming into her cat form and darting back down the corridor. Once she'd gone, Lord Death's demeanor shifted subtly, his voice losing some of its exaggerated cheerfulness. "Now then, Naruto-kun, I imagine you have questions." Many questions." "A few," Naruto acknowledged, finding his footing in this bizarre situation. "Starting with why you sent me to Konoha and let me grow up believing Minato Namikaze was my father." Lord Death sighed, a sound like wind through autumn leaves. "Direct, like your mother." "Very well." He gestured, and 4 chairs materialized on the platform. "Please, sit. This is a rather long story. As they say." TT led into the surprisingly comfortable chairs. Death took position opposite them. The cartoon-like quality of his appearance remained, but Naruto sensed a gravitas beneath it that hadn't been apparent at first. "To understand why I sent you away, you must first understand what you are," Death began, his voice now carrying the weight of centuries. "You are not merely my son, nor simply a shinobi with death powers. You are a convergence child, a being of both realms whose very existence maintains the balance between dimensions." "The messenger who appeared when I was poisoned mentioned something similar," Naruto said. "But what does that actually mean?" "It means, my boy, that your soul is the linchpin holding 2 universes in proper alignment." Death's mask somehow conveyed seriousness despite its permanent grin. The shinobi realm and Death City's dimension were never meant to interact directly. They evolved separately, one developing chakra, the other soul wavelength. But over millennia, the boundaries began to thin in places. "Like the gateway we came through," Hinata observed. "Precisely, young Hyuga. Those weak points allowed limited travel and communication between realms, but also created instability." Death's fingers traced patterns in the air, creating glowing symbols that formed a complex diagram. About 2 decades ago, my oracle foresaw a catastrophic collapse of the dimensional barriers that would destroy both worlds. And let me guess, Naruto interjected, the only solution was to create someone who belonged to both realms. Someone like me, indeed. A child born of death essence and human chakra would naturally harmonize the discordant energies, preventing collapse. Death's voice softened, but finding a suitable mother was nearly impossible. Union of death essence and human life is typically fatal. Until you found my mother, Naruto concluded. Kushina Uzumaki, death confirmed, warmth evident even through his mask. Her Uzumaki, vitality and unique chakra made her the only candidate who might survive bearing a convergence child. But she was not merely a vessel, Naruto-kun. She was remarkable in every way, fierce, compassionate, brilliant. Did you love her? The question escaped before Naruto could consider its implications. Death was silent for a long moment. Not as humans love one another. My existence is fundamentally different from human experience. But I felt connection, admiration, affection. She changed me, as did you. Before meeting Kushina, I viewed humans primarily as souls to be collected and judged. She taught me to see the value in their living moments, not just their spiritual essence. Sakura leaned forward, her analytical mind engaged. So Naruto was created deliberately to prevent dimensional collapse. But why send him to Konoha? Why not raise him here, where his death powers could be trained from childhood? The prophecy was specific, Death explained, the diagram shifting to reveal ancient text. The convergence child must develop in their mother's realm until maturity, allowing their primary essence, in your case, chakra, to fully stabilize before introducing the secondary essence, death power. But my death powers were sealed away completely, Naruto pointed out. I didn't even know they existed until the poison triggered them. An unfortunate necessity after the Nine Tails attack. Death's form seemed to darken at the memory. That was not random chance, Naruto-kun. Forces opposed to the convergence attempted to eliminate you before you could fulfill your purpose. Who? Naruto demanded, an unexpected protective fury rising within him. Who tried to kill me as a baby? We still don't know for certain, Death admitted. The attack on Konoha 17 years ago, and the attempt on my life 3 months ago bear similar signatures. Someone capable of manipulating both soul wavelength and chakra, someone ancient and powerful. Madara Uchiha could control the Nine Tails, Sakura suggested. But he's dead now, and I can't imagine him having access to soul wavelength techniques. Nor Kagaya, Hinata added thoughtfully. Despite her dimensional abilities, her powers were chakra-based. Whoever it was, Death continued, they nearly succeeded. When the Nine Tails was extracted from Kushina, your partially developed death powers instinctively protected you, creating a unique resonance with the Biju's chakra. Minato recognized this and, following our contingency plan, modified the sealing jutsu to incorporate both the Nine Tails and your death essence. So Minato knew everything. About you. About what I was. Yes, he was one of the few shinobi granted full knowledge of Death City's existence. As was Hiruzen Sarutobi. Death's mask tilted apologetically. The seal was designed to suppress your death powers until you reached 21, allowing your chakra network to fully mature. The poison that nearly killed you destabilized the seal prematurely. Which is why I'm here now instead of 4 years from now, Naruto concluded, pieces falling into place. But why keep all this from me even after I grew up? Why let me believe Minato was my father? Protection through ignorance, Death replied simply. As long as you believed yourself merely the Nine Tails Jinchuriki and Minato's son, our enemies would have no reason to suspect your true nature. Additionally, knowledge of your death powers might have triggered their premature awakening, potentially causing the very dimensional instability we sought to prevent. Naruto absorbed this, emotions warring within him, understanding the necessity while still feeling the sting of such fundamental deception. So what happens now? The messenger said you were injured. That Death City needs its heir. Indeed, for the first time, Lord Death's seemingly boundless energy dimmed, his form flickering briefly like a candle in wind. 3 months ago, an intruder breached Death City's outermost defenses and launched an attack specifically targeting my soul wavelength. I survived, but the damage has confined me to this room and severely limited my ability to maintain order in the realms of the dead. Is that why those hybrid creatures were able to form? Hinata asked. The ones that attacked us on our journey here. Precisely. Your Hyuga perception is impressive. Death's mask somehow conveyed approval. Without my full power regulating the boundaries between life and death, corrupt souls have begun escaping judgment, and someone is experimenting with combining them with chakra. Creating those Kishin hybrid things, Naruto said, remembering the twisted creatures they'd encountered. Kishin eggs, technically, death corrected. Human souls on the path to becoming Ki. Shins, demons born from human consumption of innocent souls. Adding chakra to the mixture makes them doubly dangerous and completely unpredictable. The sound of footsteps in the corridor interrupted their conversation. Blair returned, accompanied by two men who could not have presented a more striking contrast to each other. The first was tall and lean with gray hair despite appearing relatively young. Round glasses that caught the light at odd angles, and most distinctively, a large metal screw protruding from his skull which he casually turned as he walked. His lab coat bore stitched RNS that matched similar stitches across his visible skin, and his soul wavelength radiated clinical curiosity mixed with something darker that made Naruto instinctively wary. The second man practically strutted into the death room. His red hair the same shade as a setting sun, dressed in a black suit with a cross-shaped tie. His soul wavelength fluctuated wildly with every emotion, currently bro. Casting a mixture of skepticism and intense interest as he spotted the visitors. Naruto-kun, Death announced, allow me to introduce Professor Frankenstein, DWMA's top meister and researcher, and Spirit Albarn. My current death scythe, so this is the famous son, Stein observed, circling Naruto with unnerving focus. Fascinating soul structure, perfectly balanced integration of death essence and chakra. With the nine tails energy woven throughout like reinforcing threads. I'd love to dissect. You will not be dissecting my son, Stein, Death interrupted firmly. Just a little incision, Stein asked hopefully, turning the screw in his head with an audible click. No dissections. Death's form briefly expanded, darkening ominously before returning to normal. Honestly, Stein, we've discussed your greeting protocols. The end. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.